Welcome to the Picky Girl Travels podcast, the show for Black women who want more out of life and to live it as they see fit. The message here is all about defying convention, embracing adventure, and regretting absolutely nothing. I'm your host, Adelia WHEREE of the blog pickygirltravelstheworld.com. As some of you may know, I retired from teaching last June. I think my career has spanned, 22 years, 23 years. Y'all know math is not my thing. Now that I am retired, I am focusing even more so on helping other Black women live their dreams the way that I'm getting to live mine. I've always preached about, the importance of FU money as a means to give you freedom to do your thing. This episode is one of hopefully a lot more that are going to help us further get you down that path. There are a lot of reasons that I wanted to talk to my guest this week. She's a probate attorney, Courtney Humphrey. I've learned a lot about money and finances and all that kind of stuff the hard way. Women in general, especially Black women, seem to always be at a disadvantage when it comes to building wealth and keeping it. And a part of that is, making sure that when you're gone, it passes to the people you want it to. I think that if we're going to be out here living life on our own terms, we need to do it with all of the pertinent information. That's the idea behind this episode. I really hope y'all find it useful. I'm curious, you're a probate lawyer. Was that when you went to law school, is that what you intended to become?
No, not at all. And let me tell you, very few people probably go to law school knowing what they want to focus on, because law school is just it's a place to pretty much kind of deprogram and reprogram your mind to analyze and think in a certain way. And then whatever subject matter you kind of gravitate towards is great. But when you come out of law school, you may fall into a clerkship, you may fall into maybe some kind of area, just thinking you're working for a law firm for a couple of years, and then it just kind of sticks. And in today's market, very few attorneys kind of do what they call knock knock law, and that literally means somebody knocks on your door and you taking it, right? So pretty much attorneys nowadays, they kind of try to focus on a couple of subject matters that they kind of know very, very well, instead of knowing a little bit of everything. So anyway, no, I didn't. And in fact, probate law in law school is not something that's like a heavy hitter. It's kind of like a subject matter that's just kind of like, yeah, you need to know a little bit about this too, so that you could pass the bar exam. And so when I came out of law school, and this is kind of how it came about. The year I was set to graduate was the year that Hurricane Katrina hit. And so basically, any job prospects I'm from New Orleans, like I said, so I went to law school in Baton Rouge, and my thinking was that, well, I'll go to Baton Rouge for this time, and then I'll come back to New Orleans and find a job, right? So when Katrina hit, that literally vitiated any job prospects that I would have had, because the city was not in operating capacity. Nothing was up and running for many, many months, if not a year or several years. And so when I graduated and took the bar, coming back home was not an option. And so I ended up just kind of staying out in Baton Rouge, and it took a year to even find employment, but the opportunity that came along was to clerk for all the civil judges at the courthouse in Baton Rouge, the city of Baton Rouge's jurisdiction, which is the 19th. We use numbers down here, the 19th Judicial District of Baton Rouge, and so it was to clerk for all of those judges in this section of the court called duty court. And duty court was a place where a lot of documents came through that did not need to be set for a hearing, meaning they were not going to be litigated. These were pretty much perfunctory functions where, you know, documents would come through like successions or foreclosures or, you know, anything that was not that was an uncontested matter would come through, and they needed to be processed and make sure that all the legal requirements were met. And so um, when this job came about, that was really my first, like, you know, introduction to the process of successions. I mean, I learned about it in law school, but seeing how things are practiced and how they are set up in legal pleadings are a completely different story. And I did that job. I worked there from 2007 to 2010. And during that time, I just became very familiar with the attorneys in that city who focused on this practice. You know, because it's pretty much the same people that kind of do the same things, you know. So you're not going to find an attorney generally that does succession law, but then they also do criminal law too. You know, it's kind of like you kind of get on that one track and then that's it. And that's how that came about. I became so familiar with succession law and knowing how to process it that a few attorneys had paid attention to that. And so when they would have openings, excuse me, that would come up in their law firms, I got proposals. And there was one attorney that who I ended up like just kind of interacting with a lot. And I kind of liked how, you know, his demeanor and so when he extended a job offer to me, I went and worked with his firm for 4 years from 2010 to 2014 until I started my own law firm in the summer of 2014. But in his firm is where, and I'll tell you this is what got a little bit different. In his firm, we did litigation of probate matters, which is a little different, you know. So that's how that came about, and it just stuck. And in particular, I found a very particular niche for me because I was a Black woman doing that, and there's not a lot of us down here in the South in particular that really focused on that area. And Adelia, I probably don't have to tell you, we're needed. We're
Yeah.
needed. Our community is one community that does not necessarily really handle their business where successions are concerned. And so I don't want to jump ahead because you might have had that, it
Well,
might have had
yeah.
that as a talking point later, but I will point that out. And so that worked well for my benefit that I was a Black woman doing succession and succession litigation. And so I did get a lot of business that way. And girl, I have to tell you, I don't have not a website. I don't have a business card. It's been 12. I'm not lying, Adelia, I'm not lying.
Well,
Girl, it's
no,
been 12 years.
I know this because
Yeah,
I Googled
it's
you
been
and
word of
I was
mouth.
like, where is her firm? Like I could find the registration of your LLC and all that, but I was like, but where's her law firm's website? No, ma'am, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, it does not exist. It's been all word of mouth. And I have to tell you, when I branched out in 2014, I did give consideration to doing the whole website, the whole glossy kind of maybe run an ad somewhere. But Adelia, girl, it's just me. And I was like, you know what, if I put my name out there, I might get inundated with calls and all of this and clientele that I might not be able to meet the demand. So I really wanted to be careful about that because as an attorney, I mean, of course, you probably know this is like time management is a huge component part of our practice, and so you don't never want to take on more than you can chew, right? So I had to sit there and think like if I even wanted to enter into that, and I decided not to because I was doing fine just getting
Yeah.
the word of mouth, you know.
Yeah.
So
No.
so and
Why
and word
fix
gets
what ain't
around.
broke?
Yeah, right, right. And I didn't want to be that attorney known like, you know, she's she's taking my case, but she's not calling back and all this stuff. So no, I mean, I really I handle what I can handle, and it's worked for me so far. Like I said, I've been 12 years doing this. Well, really since 2014, my private practice. But even when I was with my previous law firm, he didn't have a website either. I mean, so it's just kind of like word of mouth just kind of gets around, about who can do what for you.
Now, let me ask this question to make sure that I understand. Succession law deals with ownership, like of property, who it is. Am I close there?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Okay.
it's that simple. It's literally just the transfer of ownership of property from one person to another. That's
O-
that's pretty much it. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Now, I said before, you are a probate lawyer. I know what that is, but I am going to guess that there are a bunch of people listening to this that don't. What is probate?
So probate is basically I mean, in most layman terms I can use is when someone passes away and they have died with while having property in their possession, and that property can be real estate, bank accounts, automobiles, anything that they have accumulated or purchased during their lifetime that could be passed on to their heirs. And that's like the simplest definition.
Okay. And so, people may not realize this, that when somebody dies, it's not like that matter needs to go to court. It needs to be legally settled. It's not just, hey, I'll take the TV, I'll take the couch, you can have the dinette set.
Well, girl, we good for that.
That's why I say
No,
people
no.
may not
Yeah.
realize that technically it should be a legal matter.
Look, it should be, but let me tell you, families, and look, I probably don't even have to tell you this or your listeners. We like to get together and just work it out, right? So we'll just get together and meet up at grandma's house or mama's house or whatever, and get there, and who gonna take what, and let's not fight about it. Everybody act right, And look, I have to tell you, Adelia, sometimes that's the best way to go about it. As an attorney, I try to, because sometimes it's a litigation issue and it's a cost issue, right? And so if you think that you're going to have a family that's going to fight about who's going to have, mama shiffer robe and whatever else her Bible. Look, I've gone to court over a Bible, girl. So I mean,
Oh my
really, it's
gosh.
yeah, people get riled up behind the littlest things because it's not the thing that they are fighting over. It is the relationship. It's the relationship that has existed for decades, either between each other or between the decedent, that is really what's on display when you go to court, right? But to back up to what you were saying, yeah, sometimes families will go in there and they'll just divvy up stuff by themselves, which is great. Usually, to me, I condone that because it's like, great, that's one less thing that we have to worry about, because there are usually bigger things to worry about, like real estate. Now that's something that folks usually can't, get together and just say, this is how we're going to do it. It's a little bit more of a formal process there.
Okay. And you said, like, if you think that your family members, if there's going to be a commotion or a fight over something, and you want to eliminate that, the option to eliminate that would be to have a will, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh,
and let me say this. That's one option.
okay.
I have found this very interesting, especially when with the recent celebrity deaths of, like, I think Aretha was
Prince
one
didn't
death
have
that
a
was highly,
will.
yeah, that was highly scrutinized, and also Chadwick Boseman. So I had noticed on social media that people were getting so bent up out of shape that this man did not have a will, and Prince too. Prince did not have a will. Like, this is, can't believe this. I think people need to understand that it's okay to not have a will. That is not a big deal. It is not. I think people just think, like, because people have accumulated so many assets, and their estate is worth, such a large amount, that they should have a will. But if they don't have one, that is okay, because that means that their assets are just going to follow whatever the state law provides. And generally speaking, I know in Louisiana, and the same for Mexico too. Um, If you pass away without a will, your assets will be divided amongst your spouse if you have one, and your children, not a big deal.
Okay.
And it'll go to your children equally,
So, but
you
if,
know.
let's say I don't like those people,
Right,
uh,
right, 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 right. And so
then
that
I
there
need a
that is.
will to make sure
Yeah.
that the people who I want to get my stuff get my stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah, you can redirect. You can redirect. If you don't want to leave your stuff to nobody and you want to give it all the way to charity, if you want to do like that woman did in New York and leave all her stuff to her cat, I mean, that's what can be done, you know.
Okay.
That's what can be done if that's what you choose to do. If that's what you choose to do. And
Okay.
I won't get too much into the weeds of that because there are some laws there that kind of stop some of that from happening if you have a child that's under a certain age or they're considered disabled under the law. There are provisions there that will provide for that child. But generally, if you have a will, you can direct your stuff to go to whoever it is that you want.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that because I think
And you
the
know what? And I'm sorry, I'm just
no, go
kind of
ahead. Go
throwing this
ahead.
out there because just to kind of pick up on the reason why Chadwick and Prince was not a big deal was because I don't believe neither of those men had children. I don't think so. Adelia, do you know if they? I mean,
Prince did not.
yeah, I don't
And
know that Chadwick did.
you know what? I don't think he did. Now, with Chadwick, I kind of see that like he's married. She obviously gets everything. But with Prince, I was a little surprised because he was estranged from some of his siblings. And so I was like, well, if you weren't talking to them and you didn't want them to get your stuff or you didn't want them to fight over it. But then again, Prince was known to be petty. Maybe he did want to watch his relatives fight each other and squabble over whatever he left because he was like, hey, I'll be gone. I don't know. So,
Adelia, so you've hit the nail on the head. Don't think for 1 minute, and that's what I'm saying. I think that what the public believes or what they see or what they think should be set aside because you really have to consider like what happens in people's personal lives. Don't nobody really know about. I mean, really, nobody really knows about what's going on in your personal life but you. And so, like you said, he might have been estranged from his siblings, but maybe he knew when he did not have any children. And so he said, you know what, whatever I leave behind, they can have it. They can have it, because at that point he wasn't married anymore either, you
no,
know. And so he probably just thought they can have it. And I think under Minnesota law, it probably runs the same way. Whoever his direct lineage is and heirs, it would be divided. It would be divided equally. I think where they're having a problem though is the valuation of his estate, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that man in his life was just like, you know what? I don't have no wife. I don't have no kids. However my stuff go is how it go. I'm not going to be here anymore to even care about it.
yeah. Now, I think the prevailing attitude or, because people joke about like LLC Twitter, like you see people post online, oh, well, you need a will, you need a will. And I think the prevailing thought is you have this will and that solves all the problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is
The
that,
will definitely helps in different ways. Go ahead. I'm sorry if you had
well,
something
because I
else
was
to say
like,
to that.
is that even adequate? Because it's not just, okay, here is this will. That there has to be a legal process or something with that will. Yes?
Yes, there is. It's called probate.
Okay.
And so when you present a will to a court, they are probating, they are giving legal recognition, they are giving legal authentication to this document. They're saying that this document meets all the legal requirements under the law in the state in which this document was drafted. This is good to go. And so the court will probate the will, right? And then there it is. There is the decedent's directives of where he wants or he or she wants his assets to go. Who is going to serve as the executor of the estate is also what you do in the will. And that is the person who makes sure that the estate is administered, that certain assets are liquidated, that the transfer of ownership actually happens. Um, There are other things that you can do in the will, which is which I have noticed has become a more trending thing, which is to set forth how you want to be buried.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
did that in my will.
yeah. Whether or not you want to be cremated, what kind of funeral you want to have. Some people are setting that forth because there really is not a document per se that allows you to set forth your burial directives, or your how you are to be funeralized. I mean, so some people are putting that in their will. That way they have that there, that they want their body to go to science, which is actually one of, that's my personal choice. um Child, and then cremate me and throw me over the Caribbean. That's where I'm at with that. But so I mean, you have all of these things that you can put in the will, that's germane to it, of course, because look, I have actually been a part of a succession where a will was actually a FU letter to everybody. I ain't never seen nothing like that before. I'm telling you, we had to present that to the judge and everything. It was a FU letter to everybody, and it was like 6 pages long. I mean, this man went off.
You
And
know
on the
what?
last page, in the last paragraph, he finally said what he wanted done. But girl, we had to probate that whole letter. It was wild.
I'm not
It
mad
really
at that.
was.
I can see like this is the one time that you can vent what you need to say and people have to pay attention. They have to listen, because they're
Girl,
waiting for you to
it
get to the good stuff.
not only listen, but it's going to become a part of the court record. So anybody can go and look at it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I want to be very specific about who gets my things after I'm gone, I need to have a will for that. Now, and after I die, that will needs to be probated. But what should, I guess the question is, because I'm thinking like after I'm gone, how do people know where my will is? Like, does it
Yeah.
have to stay with a lawyer? Where do I put the original?
Yeah. So what we do in Louisiana, because look, I'm glad you brought that up, because that could be a problem. Then you have people in the family saying, I know they wrote a will. I know they wrote a will, cannot find it. Where is it? Can't find the will. Can't find the will because the will cannot be centrally located, can't be referenced. Um, and so what I suggest my clients do after we have executed a will is to record that will in conveyance records at your courthouse,
Hmm.
or whatever deposit that is in your jurisdiction, where you can record documents of that nature. Because most courthouses, if not all of them, have a place where you can go to record important documents like that. Like mortgages get recorded, right?
Yeah.
You can even record a power of attorney. You can record a will. So you go there and record. You can go there and literally just go to your courthouse and tell them you want to record your will, and then they will record the will, and there it is at the courthouse. That way, if you pass away and nobody can find the will, they can go down to the courthouse, and those clerks will run a name search for you, and every document that has been recorded under your name will come up, and there it is.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's an option. Some people who are very old school will still get a safe deposit box. I can't
Hmm.
say that I would recommend that too much, just because that's kind of phasing out now with online banking and stuff. So people don't really even think about going to get a safe deposit box, but that it still exists. If you
It
put your will in a
exists,
safe
but
deposit box, it
every
exists.
branch doesn't have them. Like when I first moved to
No, you're right.
Honduras,
Yeah.
I tried to, well, I did open one, but it took some work trying to figure out where I could get it because every branch of the bank didn't have one. And that was like
Hmm.
a whole nother thing that I had to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm glad you raised that too, because some banks are phasing that out. It's not very popular anymore.
Okay. Now, if I die and I don't have a will, and I own things like real estate, or I guess there is a substantial money in a bank account, and for some reason there is no beneficiary listed on that bank account.
Mhm.
Does that does need to be probated?
It depends.
Okay.
So I will speak for Louisiana, and in whatever state your listeners are in, I would suggest that they may want to kind of dig around to see if something similar like this exists. But in Louisiana, if you have $25,000 or less in a bank,
Mm-hmm.
you can well, not, not you, but whoever your heir is, or the attorney that might be working on your matters, can simply file just an affidavit. It's just a bank affidavit that details who your heirs are, and that is enough. It's a very simple one-page document, and that is enough to release those funds out of that bank account. But if you go over that limit, then you need to file something judicially with the court, or you can file what's also called the next step between going, but between that bank affidavit and actually opening something in court, is called a small succession affidavit. And so here in Louisiana, that's when your estate is worth less than a certain amount. And
Yeah.
my brain's a little, I think it's
Texas has something like that.
125,000.
Texas has
Yeah,
something like that. Um,
exactly.
okay, I guess my question is,
But Adair, let me just say this right quick. Before real
mm-hmm,
estate,
mm-hmm,
um, for real estate, you should file something judicially with the
okay,
court. That's the best way. Yeah.
okay. But it is possible if somebody doesn't own things like real estate, like basically all they have is the stuff that's in their apartment when they die.
Yeah.
And if the family members can come to an agreement amongst themselves of who gets what, is
Yeah.
there a need to go to probate or no?
No,
Okay.
there really isn't. There really isn't. The main reason to go to the one of the main reasons to go to probate is because with items like real estate, you need to have that recorded. You need to have that recorded for lots of reasons, right? So that you are actually recognized as the owner of that property if you are in possession of real estate.
Yeah.
And so you need to have that recorded in the courthouse, showing that the transfer of the property happened from that person to you. But when you have property that we call that movable property, real estate here is immovable property, but this is movable property. This is just personal possessions.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, not
Okay.
necessarily. You don't have to make it a judicial thing. You could just come to an agreement with everybody, and as long as everybody's on the same page, and ain't nobody gonna act funny later. Look, if you want, what I have done before is literally just create a document, just evidencing who got what, right? That way, nobody can say later, I didn't get that,
Yeah.
or yeah, or so and so got X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, they didn't. They got A, B, and C. So if it's that kind of situation, you may want to have an attorney just kind of memorialize who got what. That way, it's not an issue later.
I often joke that I'm lucky. I'm lucky in quotation marks. I am the only surviving child. And so when my mom died, things were very simple because I didn't have to try and get, six people to agree on we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It was just me. And I got to say, this is what's going to happen.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can see where that would be necessary. Okay. So if somebody decides like I want to be very specific about who gets things in my assets, if they're married, does their will have to be, first of all, should they have a separate will from their spouse?
Yes, and you have to.
Okay.
I don't know, and let me be clear, I don't know all the laws of the United States, but generally speaking, I have not ever heard of a will that is executed by two people, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's a husband and wife will.
Okay.
Um, Each person has to do their own will, that way it details what has taken place in that person's life, because everybody has different paths, right? And so even though me and my husband are married, he might have been married before, once or a couple of times. Usually a will dictates that. It'll say, I have been married 3 times. These have been my wives, or and name them, and these are the children that came from those marriages, and so that's usually detailed in a will. If
Okay.
a will is done that way. If a will is done that way, let me put that out there.
Okay. Okay. I know as a lawyer, you're like, I can't, you have to be very specific in what you say.
No, girl,
So
because
I get it.
I've seen all kind of wills. Like I told you, that man cussed people out in that 1 6-page will. I've also dealt with wills where this man had, I mean, every year this man was falling in and out with his children. So at the time that he passed away, he had 8 wills. And girl, guess what? He did them all himself at home, which is generally not a problem. But this is kind of why you want legal advice on that, is because he never revoked any prior will. So if you ever
Oh
even,
no.
yeah, so if you've ever even looked at a will, if you've ever even Googled it, normally the opening line is, this is my last will and testament. I'm of sound mind and body, blah, blah, blah. All prior wills are revoked, right? There's a revocation of the prior will because you don't want anything contradictory to happen. And girl, this man just sat down, was writing out wills pretty much every year. He fell out with 1 or 2 of his kids because he switched it up, but he never revoked any. So we ended up having to probate 8 wills, and then just kind of had to figure it out from there. It was quite the process, and it went on for
That sounds like
several years.
a mess, and that sounds
Yeah.
very expensive to fix.
It was, and it was very contentious, because he married a second time, and so he had a set of kids that were like in their 40s, and then he had a set of kids that were teenagers,
Oh
and
man.
there was a lot of fighting.
Oh wow. Um, I'm trying to think what was my next question.
I'm sorry if I
Well,
got
no, no,
you
no,
off.
no, no, no. Because that wasn't a question, but I do now want to ask, and you kind of answered this already. So you technically you can write a will yourself.
Yes, you can. Um, for everybody in their perspective states, should probably familiarize themselves with this. I actually wrote my own will in
But you're a
Louisiana.
lawyer. That's different.
Yeah, but girl, look, anybody can do it, and most states, most states create a provision for this because some people may not have the money to pay a lawyer to write a will, right? And so it's like, well, here's an opportunity for you to write your own will so that you don't feel like you can't participate in that process because you don't have the money. And so in Louisiana, literally you just have to meet a few requirements, and that's just to make sure that the document is dated and that you have signed it. And that's pretty much it, that you date it and that you sign it at the end of the document. And then in between, you just write what you want. You write what you want. And so, yeah, I mean, your point is well taken because of the story I just told. With that gentleman that wrote all those wills, and so it does help to at the very least. I think in the age of information, you should be able to find so many samples and examples on the internet that could help guide you. But yeah, if you can get legal advice on that, you can either have a will done or have a consultation about what needs to be said in the will. But yeah, you can write a will yourself. You can.
I think one of the stumbling blocks for some people is concern about cost. Although they really have no point of reference how much it should cost to get a will, they just know it involves a lawyer, so it's probably expensive.
Yeah.
How much does it cost, or what's like a range to expect? Because I would imagine the more complicated you make it, the more time the attorney has to spend, therefore it will cost more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the point. That's the point to know, Adelia, really, because um, I've done wills for people where it was a simple will, a very simple will. And in fact, it was so simple, I would tell them, you can do this yourself. That way they wouldn't even have to pay me. But they would, no, I'd rather an attorney do it. And I get that. But there are some people out here who just have their life is structured in a way, or they have some things happening in their lives. Like, I think not the most complicated, but one instance where it did take a lot of time and effort to really try to get it right was where I had a client who had a special needs child. And so that client really wanted to make sure, not only did the will have to be done, but there also had to be a trust that was incorporated in the will to provide for this child should this parent die before their child dies. And so documents like that, it took several months for us to kind of get that right. And of course, I was working on other things, and that client, I was also working on other things. So if you really like get very intense about it, it could probably done in a much shorter time. But just going back and forth, passing the document back and forth to make sure that the terminology was correct, that the intent was there, just making sure that the document was where they needed it to be. It did take a lot of time and effort. And so I'm saying all that to say that it's hard to say how much a will should cost somebody, on the low end, depending on what state you're in too, that could dictate price. But on the low end, you could probably have a will done. And what I do is packages. I'll do a will and a power of attorney for, like I'll do kind of like a package kind of thing, and also a living will, which is, the resuscitation of life directive. I'll try to do all of that in a package for people who are interested in really handling uh who are really handling their affairs. But it can range anywhere between, on the low end like $500 to on the high end a couple of $1,000, depending on what it is that you need done.
Okay. I think sometimes people assume it involves a lawyer. They're talking about tens of thousands of dollars.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
uh,
I don't know. Look, unless you are, and look, you're not, and this is the other thing. I've not seen a will so complicated that it can't, I've dealt with estates that are multi-million valued at that much, a couple of $1 million. And it's not really the will that is complicated, because all the will is doing is telling you where you want the assets to go. That's it. And the asset is the asset is the asset. It's real estate. It's a bank account. It's an automobile. It's a boat. Whatever, right? And what takes a lot of money is maybe the distribution of those assets, the transfer of ownership, or maybe if litigation is involved. That's when you start getting into, really high costs. But the actual, creating the will, um, you know, uh, should not cost so much that it's out of reach for um regular folks, is what I'm saying.
okay. You said litigation. Can people contest your will? Like, you have written this will and somebody thinks that they're entitled to something. Can they be like, no, I disagree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That happens a lot. And it's happening a lot more in today's age, because people today have not set themselves up for their own future. You will find, and I think, Adelia, you probably have seen this, only because I know that you also are very in tune with financial literacy and making sure people know how to save money. We have a very, very large segment of the population that have not done that. They have not put towards retirement accounts. They have not saved for their future. They've not done what you and I might consider the minimum. And so when a loved one dies, they are looking at it like a free fall. I'm sorry, a windfall. They're looking at that as a windfall of sorts that they are entitled to, you know. And they start taking stock of their own lives. Like, I don't have a whole lot. My mama passed away. She messed around and wrote this will and left it to my brother, left the house to my brother. And I know if we sold that house would probably sell for $300,000. It's $150,000 I'm not getting, if it's split between us. So people get really, really litigious nowadays in successions, where in the past you didn't really see a whole lot of that. Successions would happen, and if you didn't get anything out of it, generally it was not a big deal. People would just kind of let it go, just not a big deal. But nowadays, because people have saved so little, if they don't have anything at all,
they're counting chickens that don't belong to them.
They are counting them now, while
Yeah.
while folks are alive. They're counting them now. Grandma's gonna die. She's got that house that's paid off, and some of that is mine. Yeah.
Is there I guess there is also a cost associated, like, so if I wanted to contest a will, I would have to like get myself a lawyer to, while that's in probate. I'm trying to figure out how I want to ask this. When a will gets probated, is it like a fee, or is it because I'm assuming there's a cost with that process.
Yeah, there is. And sometimes that's why people have opted to do trusts, because trusts flow outside of the probate process and the judicial process.
Okay.
You are circumventing that process. So you're leaving everything in trust, and you're just saying, hey, look, I'm going to execute this trust with an attorney, have an attorney draft that document. They execute the trust so that all of their items can flow outside of probate, but you have to make sure that you have included all of those items, because I've got people who have passed away. They didn't include everything in the trust, and so the trust got executed or validated, but then we still had to go to court to deal with the property that was not added into the trust. And so that's another consideration. But generally, if to go back to your original question, if there is no trust at play and you need to probate a will, to have the court recognize it, then yeah, that does cost money, and every jurisdiction is different. Where I practice right now in Baton Rouge is one of the more expensive jurisdictions in our state. And then, of course, you have smaller towns where it does not cost that much. Maybe the filing fees are like $300 or something. But in Baton Rouge, just to step foot up in there, it's going to run you like $600 to $700. And that's just that first document. After you probate the will, you want to do a petition for possession. And that's the thing that kind of details to the court who the assets are going to. You have to file a detailed descriptive list. That's the list that lists all the assets that are being transferred. And then the culmination of all of these filings is the judgment. The judgment of possession is where it says, Stacy gets X, Y, and Z. Michael gets, this and that, and then that's the document. The judgment is what is going to get recorded, because that shows who got what, and that is what actually transfers the ownership of the property. And all of those different pleadings cost money to file.
Who pays that?
So generally, the person who is petitioning the court pays for that, but they can get reimbursed by the estate at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Litigation's another matter, but if there's no litigation involved, that's usually how it goes. You front the costs, and then you get reimbursed by the estate at the end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, no, but this is why I wanted to talk to you, because this whole process, I think a lot of people just sort of feel it's mysterious and it is unknowable, or they don't know where to start. And
Yeah.
I have, well, when my mother died, it was complicated by a third sibling that I suspected was deceased, but I couldn't prove.
Mm,
And,
there's
and
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there was no will, or there was a
Yeah.
will, but it was really, really old and got damaged in the rain. So
Okay.
in essence, there was no will. And
Mm,
so I had to kind of just fumble around and figure it out.
mm, yeah.
Kind of the story of my life. Okay, so I think some people feel like, okay, so I have a will, I'm good. Is a will all somebody needs?
So I would suggest that people also look into doing a power of attorney, because the power of attorney is the document that that assists you while you're alive. While you're alive. Once you die, the power of attorney dies with you. So a lot of people think after someone dies, they're like, well, I got power of attorney. It's like, well, that's no good anymore. That has expired with the person who benefited from that power of attorney. The will then kicks in and picks up where that leaves off, in a way, if you will. But the power of attorney is the document that assists you when you are not able to care for your own affairs. And so, should you become ill to the point where you cannot handle your day-to-day transactions, if you end up in a coma, um,
Or that
those kind of.
minibus in
Mhm.
the rural Mexican village does fall
There it
off the
is.
cliff and I am
There it is.
hospitalized.
Yeah.
The power of
Yeah.
attorney lets somebody else access the money to be able to pay for things and do that sort
Right,
of thing.
right. And I'm glad you brought that up as an example, because if something like that does happen to you in another country, you have a power of attorney that's actually, um, subject to the laws of the state of where that power of attorney was drafted, right? And so that power of attorney really is only good, um, in the state where it was drafted, or generally in the United States, or if you have any accounts there that would help that person access. But let's say you have matters that need to be handled in Mexico because you opened up a Mexican bank account, right? A bank account that's in
Okay.
Mexico, or you're hospitalized in Mexico. Generally, where the hospitals are concerned down there, I don't think you're going to have a problem, or
No,
your
they
loved
just
one will
want
have a
somebody with
problem.
cash. They don't really care
Exactly.
who's paying.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. Um, and that's only because I'm a little bit more familiar with Mexico, and you are too, and maybe you could speak
Yeah.
to China. I don't know how that would bode in other places like Canada or England, or I really don't know. But if you have a power of attorney, you may want to consider having that power of attorney recognized legally in the country where you are currently residing. And that way, if something should happen to you, it's been recognized, and that's a done deal. And not everybody does this. I mean, this is being, overly cautious. I've not ever heard a horror story of people having problems uh, dealing with, because you have U.S. embassies, you have things like that will help you and assist you when a loved one, something happens to them while they're abroad. But I'm just throwing that out there, just to let folks know. I mean, having a United States, or wherever state you're from, power of attorney, and going elsewhere with it, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything to
No,
them. You're
but
right,
it
right.
does help if they need to access things in that state back in the US.
That's correct. That's
But
correct.
it was a couple of years ago, there was a teacher in, I think, UAE that like had this massive stroke. It was a
Mm,
stroke or an aneurysm
mm,
or something like that. And I know that there was some issues because they didn't have like any kind of paperwork,
mm,
and
mm,
it was I think the embassy was able to help the sister get like an expedited passport to go, but
mm.
on the financial side, things were not in order. And so that's another reason why this is kind of at the top of my list because, again, I'm trying to make it, I've been the person who had to figure things out and people didn't have their paperwork in order. So I
Yeah.
very much want whoever is around to make things as simple for them because people do, like the average person doesn't have working knowledge of all of these things. So I
Mm-mm.
believe like you need to make things as simple as possible for them.
Yeah, especially because depending on what they're dealing with, they might just be emotionally overwhelmed. And so having things kind of set out in a way that doesn't have them doing a whole lot of legwork or guesswork is beneficial for that loved one, because depending on what they're dealing with where you're concerned, I mean, who knows whether it's a hospitalization or it's death, you know, and they have to deal with your body, bringing it back to the US or whatever, or having you buried where you are. I mean, it's a lot for that person to deal with. And so the last thing on their mind is trying to sit down and figure out paperwork. I mean,
Yeah.
and Adelia, I mean, your brain it's like it's firing in so many different directions. It can be hard to focus.
So the power of attorney is while you are alive. When you
Yeah.
die, the will kicks in.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned a living will. Is that something
Mm.
people should think about as well?
Um, I would say yes, because the living will is actually and don't get hung up by the name. You may want to Google this terminology because it may differ from state to state. But the living will is actually the your basically your do not resuscitate directive. It's a very short document, and it just kind of tells the medical provider whether or not you want life-saving measures to take place. And some people don't want to be resuscitated. Um, there's also an option to have intravenous, I guess,
Like a feeding
food. And
tube?
yes, yes, something like that to keep you going, to see if you can be resuscitated. Some people are adverse to that idea even, but this is the document that tells the medical provider what it is that you want. I will say this only because I literally experienced this recently with my father. He had to be brought to the emergency room a few weeks ago, and while we were in emergency, they asked me about resuscitation measures. And so some hospitals, and I don't know about Mexico and places abroad, but some hospitals in the U.S., if you are brought through emergency, they will ask you there. They will ask you there. Um, Either if you're able to communicate the person that's receiving the hospitalization, or your loved one, what do if he codes, if this person codes, meaning if they go into distress, do you want us to go ahead and implement life-saving measures? Do you want us to put him on a feeding tube, or things of that nature? So they can ask that at the hospital, but if you have a document that says that ahead of time, that's also helpful too. That's also helpful too.
And I think it's also helpful to have a conversation with your people. Um,
Mhm. About what they want.
yeah,
Absolutely.
like this is what I want. But I also know that, you know, when you're not there, people will do what they think is best. But the best you can do is make sure that nobody has to say, well, I don't know what she would have wanted, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know what she would have wanted, or you are supplanting what you would what you would have wanted for what they want. But again, it's like you're making the best decision that you can. So nobody will fault you for that at all. And just so that we're talking about who should keep what where, powers of attorney, that you know you get a chance to you appoint who you want to act as your agent, who you want to act as your agent under a power of attorney. And you even have an opportunity to also state in that document if something should happen to that person who is going to act in the secondary role as the agent. And so generally, once that document is executed by all parties, that's another document that can be recorded at the courthouse. It can. That's another document that can be recorded there. and you want to give a copy of that document to the people that you have appointed. That way they have it. And so if they do, God forbid, get a phone call that you've been hospitalized, they already have it with them. They don't have to go to your house to look for it or anything like that. It's with them. They have it. And then they could just go straight to the hospital or wherever they need to go with it.
Quick question. When you record something at the courthouse, you're giving them the original?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the idea. And so what I do for my clients is I tell them, I say, look, you go ahead and record the original and I will make you certified copies. And certified copies is generally sufficient for a hospital to recognize or a bank, depending on what it is you're trying to do. As long as it's certified by the notary who executed the document. That's fine.
Okay. What do you wish people knew about probate, about wills, about successions?
That it is, especially for our community, Adelia, I just have to say this.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. It needs to be done. We need to do it. Our community is not known for this. Just like we're not known for wealth building, and I have to say this, doing a succession is part of wealth building, actually.
That's what I was going to say, that there's a connection between the two of those things.
Absolutely. The act of passing down assets to family members, to your heirs, is a part of wealth building. And it needs to happen more often in our community. It just does not. I think that our community, and rightfully so, look, we have large suspicion about dealing with the judicial system, about dealing with courthouses, about dealing with, so I would suggest, if it makes you more comfortable, to find an African-American attorney or a person of color that deals with this subject matter, then do that, but don't do nothing. It's necessary for us. I mean, there are successions I've worked on, Adelia. I mean, property had not been passed down in like 50, 60, 70 years. You just kept getting people to just live in a house. They just, somebody would die and the next person would move in. And they did that forever. They just kept doing that until it came time that they just had to do something with it. Maybe it ended up falling into disrepair, or somebody didn't pay the taxes, right? They have all these scenarios that come about. I even had one family who ended up getting an offer from Walmart. Walmart was coming through, trying to buy up some property and build. And it was actually a property nobody had lived in quite some time, and they wanted to sell, but couldn't
but
sell.
If you haven't fixed the title on it, no, because I have I know someone in my life that's going through this. I saw it in my mom's neighborhood because it took me a while, but I got it done, got it put into my name, but I could look in the neighborhood and see, what's the term? The estate of such and such, like all of these houses where the original homeowners, who were like my mother's age, they've passed. I'm going to guess there was no will, and the children, or if there were, nobody's done anything with the title. And then I know some people that are like, they'd like to sell it, but there are 4 children, and then one of the children died. And so the way I understand it, that person's children, so you've just added another 4 people into the mix, and now trying to get everybody to, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. And that's why it usually can't get done, because just like you said, I mean, the family unit has definitely decreased in size, right? But I think we've all come from families. My father is one of 9. I mean, and those 9 had children. So I mean, you have things where it's like, that's exactly what happens. You know, when it's not caught at a certain point, then somebody passes away, and now their 4 children come into play, and then one of those children. I'm literally dealing with a succession like that right now that I've been working on since 2012. So it's been 8 years, going on 9 now, that I've been working on that particular succession where that has been the case. And I think this year is going to be the year that we close it, because we're getting very close. But that has been it. Some people you can't find. People fall off the map all the time.
And I think that's what people don't get, that even though such and such says they're not interested in the house, you still have to find them and have that legally recognized that they're giving up their interest or what have you. Like, it's not just as simple as, oh, okay, well, we agree to, no, everybody's got to
No,
be found.
everybody. That's right. That's right. You can't skip over somebody just because they're not around and you can't find them. You have to make the effort to find them. Sometime employ a private investigator, sometime employ a representative that the court appoints. They have to make the effort to find them. There has to be a determination that they're dead even. I mean, it really can get really, really deep. I mean, I've worked on successions where people have been in jail. So we had to get, heirs who are jailed, get them to sign. And look, and let's be clear, it's not even to say that once you find everybody, they're going to agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Because all it takes is one person to mess up the whole thing. One person just to say, I'm not because I don't think y'all selling it for enough, or,
And how
mom
often
wanted
that
me to live
is
there.
that is so
Yeah.
common.
Yeah, it is. It's very common. And then you got a kink. You didn't spend a lot of time trying to find 35 people, and all it takes is one person to say, no.
And something
so,
like that could be avoided if you
yeah.
had a will.
Yeah, if you had a will, or if you had completed succession, if you had completed succession timely, because you are just trying to narrow the scope here of interested parties,
Okay.
and
So-
right now it's like it's so big, it's so many people involved, and it could have been narrowed over time.
So when you say complete succession timely, so let's say moms did not have a will, but the heirs went ahead and I don't even know what I'm trying to say. But basically, even if there isn't a will, if they had handled who does the property go to sooner versus
Yeah.
letting it go through a couple of generations.
Yeah. If they had done probate, if they had open succession, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If they had just if they had done that at that time that mom had passed away. And look, there is no expiration on succession now. There isn't. In some dates there is an expiration on how long you've got to probate a will. And I won't go too deep into that. But people should recognize that there can be an expiration on that. But there is no expiration on when you open succession, And so if somebody has passed away in the 1960s, you open a succession today. It could still happen. It could still take place. But it's better to have done it, contemporaneously in time with their death than waiting a decade or two, because now you're involving a lot of people. A lot of people now are part of this conversation, when over time you could have just dealt with the groups that were pertinent,
Yeah. No, that's what pushed me, because I kept thinking, if I die and I have not settled this, then that burden falls to my kids.
Sure.
And one of my daughters already has 2 kids. So, like I was like, let me get this taken care of to simplify things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to say? Because that's all of my questions.
I think that's it. It feels like we covered a lot of information. I don't know that there's too much more to add to that, because I think beyond this, Adele, I think that it gets specific to that person.
Yeah.
And that person's reality and whatever it is that they're dealing with. But I think the general knowledge of what's important to take into consideration is, as long as people know that, and don't be, it's hard to say this, I want people to think about it. I really, really do, especially women our age. I'm 45,
Yeah, me too.
Adelia. And so, I don't, the thing about death is that you don't know when it's going to happen.
It's coming whether you're ready for it or not.
That's real. That's real. You don't know when. Today could be the day. You don't
Yes.
know when. You just don't. I mean, I've got really good genes in my family. I think if, unless something happens otherwise, I should live a pretty long life. But that does not mean that there's not a car accident in my future. There's not some, like you mentioned earlier about, taking that tour bus in Mexico. I mean, it could happen anytime, any place. And so, you don't have to be obsessed with this notion, but you just have to at least be aware and know that if you are a person that has the type of assets that need to be addressed, don't be afraid to do that. Just don't be afraid to do that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I can't really express my gratitude here, but I am very, very appreciative that you were willing to come on here and that you took time out of your Sunday morning. Normally, when I talk to people, this is when they would plug their thing or say how people can find them. I'm going to guess that you don't have anything like that.
I don't. I'm so sorry. I
No,
really don't.
no. I just want to give people an opportunity that, if they've got a thing that, or if
I
they,
know.
want
Yeah.
people to connect with them, that they can. But if not, you don't. It's no big.
Well, I will say this. Not that I am adverse to that. They can find me on Facebook. They can message me. I think that's how you and I first communicated. And I know I'm in and out of those Facebook groups, especially the expat ones, Adelia. Because I didn't think that's where we have crossed paths.
Yeah.
But just generally, I mean, they could just run my name through the Facebook search, Courtney
But if
P.
you don't
Humphrey.
want people coming to find you, we don't have to do this.
No, it's not a big deal
Okay.
because what I enjoy doing is I'm like this. If I can't help you, I will point you in the right direction. I'm just glad that people are looking for the information, and so if anything that we have talked about today has even has sparked something in people to even want to seek out more information, I will definitely point them in the right direction. I don't have a problem with doing that. And I'll go ahead and I have a law firm email, so I'll go ahead and give that because it's not a big deal at all. It's
Okay.
Courtney Courtney at thehumphreylawfirm.com. It's a little long. The Humphrey Law Firm, THEHUMPHREY lawfirm.com. And I'll send you something in writing. That way you have it, Adelia.
Okay.
And people can reach out to me there. Not a problem at all. Really not. I like to help people. I like to give our people all the information that we need just to get them on the right path.
Hey, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what did you think of the episode? Is there a topic that you would like me to dig into on the podcast? Either way, I want to hear from you. Let me know. You can actually leave me a voicemail to tell me what you think. There is a link in the show description, or you can reach out on social media on Twitter at Picky Girl Travels, no I in girl, Facebook and Instagram, Picky Girl Travels. As always, guys, thank you for your support. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, or if you're catching this on YouTube, you can subscribe there. Another way to show support would be to leave a review or share the podcast with other women. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment, you give it a like. If you would want to support the show financially, there are options for you to do that too. You can use the link in the description to become a patron or to buy me a hot chocolate, because y'all know I don't like coffee. Until next week.